Welcome back to Meet Bridget, a show that sheds light on the often untold teenage and young adult stories of successful women from all types of backgrounds and in all sorts of careers. This show is an extension of our confidence coaching service for young women. I'm Asha Gabriel, and I co host this show alongside my best friend and Meet Bridget COO, Kashia Rosenberg. This is season 4 of Meet Bridget, and today I'm so excited for a very special episode. My friend Jessica Peisch is here to dive into all things high school and college athletics. She is a distinguished athletic director. I'm going to read her bio because it is astounding. But we put our heads together and we really thought that this would be a great episode to deviate a little bit from the standard arc of our episodes and really cover topics that girls in our events have asked about managing athletics as a student and all of the dynamics that come into play, the demands of being a student athlete and then pursuing a career path within athletics. So get ready for a really fun episode. So again, Jessica is the girls and boys athletic director at Redwood High School in California's Marin County. There are approximately 1,800 students at Redwood, and around 1,100 of them participate in athletics. So if that tells you anything, this is a very athletic school. Jessica has been in high school education for 22 years, 20 of which have been as an athletic director, and 16 of those years were in a dual role as athletic director and physical education teacher. During her high school tenure, she has also coached multiple high school sports teams, including girls varsity soccer head coach as a role. Jessica discovered her lifelong passion for athletics when she raced in her first swim meet at age 3. She played multiple high school sports, but chose to focus on soccer exclusively, starting her sophomore year of high school and continuing through college. She played D1 college soccer and earned a partial scholarship in her sophomore year and a full ride by her senior year. She competed in the NCAA D1 Women's National Tournament in 1999 and again in 2001, but this time as captain of her team. Jessica advanced to playing semi-pro soccer and then continued to pursue her passion in sports management, earning several awards, including the State of California Girls Athletic Director of the Year Award in 2015, presented by the California State Coaches Association. To put the importance of that award into context for our listeners, California has 1,615 high schools that participate in CIF athletics, and only 321 of those schools are led by female athletic directors. Jessica has also earned the 2016 Certified Master Athletic Administrator distinction through the National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. 2018, she earned the North Coast Section Athletic Director of the Year Award, and in 2022, the North Coast Section Distinguished Service Award, both of which come from the California Athletic Directors Association. Jessica currently holds a BS in kinesiology from Fresno State and a master's in educational administration from San Francisco State. She's currently a member of the California Interscholastic Federation Athletic Administrator Advisory Committee since 2013 and the Leadership Initiative Committee since 2021. She's a founding member and a past president for the North Coast Section Athletic Director Association, and she served on the North Coast Section Sports Advisory Committee for 9 years. She's also been the site director for numerous section and state playoffs. The topics that we're going to dive in today and discuss are from Jessica's experiences as an athlete, coach, and a sports administrator. If you can't tell by all of the distinctions and experience that I just went through, she is a great authority for us to have as we talk about these topics about being a student athlete, pursuing a career in sports. So she's just really a wealth of information with us here today. So the topics that we selected today are from the Women's Sports Foundation.org organization, so you can review them there too. But this has been a really mindfully crafted conversation, so I can't wait for you guys to listen. Welcome, Jessica, to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I mean, there's so many places to dive in. I think when I, did some research about you, went through your bio, the one story that just has stuck with me and I think is so relatable and sweet is that swim meet at age 3 and how that just ignited something in you that really never stopped. Can you tell us a little bit about just that that why and how you knew this was something that was gonna be a constant in your life?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just it felt the most comfortable. The passion was always there and I couldn't get enough of it. Like I wanted to sign up for everything possible. I would come home and be like, tell my mom, this tryout's happening this day. Then I got to go straight to this practice after. Then you need to pick me up at this time. Like I organized all of this. I just loved it from the start. I do love the competition of it, and so we'll dive into that later. But I just love the being with teammates, the competition, and just it's fun. I just really, really enjoy it.
I'm looking at my daughters right now, and they're so similar in a lot of ways, but so different. And one of my daughters
Mhm.
is we laugh because she is just like a little bruiser. She is so agile, and even when she falls, she tucks and rolls. She's just we can tell we're like, there's just something athletic about her. Were you always just athletic? Were you one of those people that naturally was like good at every sport you tried, or was it more of a development and like being better at certain things than other things?
I would definitely say it came very easily for me. I think I tried a lot, but I had more passion in certain things, so tried to do as many teams as I possibly could. But soccer was always my true love. Funny story growing up, like on a Sunday, a lot of households have football games, right? And I have two sisters, and I, looked at my sisters. I think they're watching cartoons, and I was upset that nobody was watching football with me, and I couldn't get the controller to watch football. It was just part of who I was, it just what I enjoyed and still enjoy.
Well, I think the ability to recognize that and run with it is so special because I don't know not everybody has that spark right away where it's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, wait, wow, this is something," and they keep with it. Sometimes it takes
Yeah.
people a while to try things and experiment, but, yeah, what I loved about what you've said is that even though you knew sports, athletics in general was something you were into, you still had this trial and error process of, like, I wanna
Mhm.
go out for every team and see all the sports I can do, and then, you eventually, through that process of trying everything, you narrowed it down to the things that you really wanted to hone into, which, became soccer later on. So I think sometimes there can be disillusion with people that find their passion early, that it's like, oh, they found their one thing. There was no failure. There was no like having to weed out what wasn't right for them. There's always refinement, even when you find your passion as early as age 3.
It's hard not to specialize, especially nowadays,
Mhm.
but I feel fortunate that I was able to be in a community that I was able to be involved in many different, from dance to diving to softball, soccer, volleyball, just everything that I could. I would say trial and error is important and it's hard making teams, especially when they start to get competitive, and you experience your first cut. I was fortunate that I made most, all the teams except one team that I tried out for. I tried out for cheerleading one year and I didn't make cheerleading, but that year I ended up doing volleyball, basketball, soccer, softball instead. Those, 4 seasons and that was in junior high. So, it was hard being cut, even though I probably much better in the other sports, but the first time you're like, wow, but it's important to learn, okay, that's not my path. What else can I do? And take a moment and figure that out.
I think it'd be fun as we're going through sort of your own experiences as an athlete to also kind of jump forward and view it from your perspective that you have now, being on the other
Mhm,
side.
mhm,
For young women and men, as you oversee both, that have gone through that process of being cut from a sport
mhm,
that they went out for, or even like, I mean, especially these days and at the school that you work with, when a student goes out for a sport, sometimes it's the whole family really invested in that
mhm.
student's success. Can you tell us a little bit about different ways that you might suggest a student to take getting cut from a team or a disappointment or maybe not playing in that championship game,
Mhm,
those sort of letdowns that are inevitable in team sports, like just
mhm,
every game is not going to be
mhm,
for every person. Do you have any pointers or perspective being on the other side for students and
mhm.
even their families?
Yeah, I would say one, prepping, especially in high school, especially when it's competitive and there are cuts for majority of teams, it seems like the preparation to it, look at the website, in the sense of finding, maybe they have off-season training, maybe they have summer training. And when you're in town, join those opportunities to meet people, to learn the style. There's social media is a huge tool. Look on social media, see what that team's up to, see who they're playing. Then there's definitely games online nowadays. So you're kind of doing your research, you're prepping for, to be prepared. We didn't have that opportunity growing up, but it's great to use that tool now to prepare, to see, use technology and get prepared. And then once you're prepared for that, then definitely do the administrative part, register for the sport, turn in your physical. I know that's like such a simple thing, but it really is stressful for on the day of that kids are like, oh my gosh, I had needed to register. I didn't do that. It's very stressful for families. So take that out of the equation and get yourself. That's part of the preparation. Then when tryouts come, try not to be stressed out. Hopefully you prepared. Hopefully you work, practice the sport over the summer or prepared for many years, depending on what it is. Kind of know what the tryout is. Maybe hopefully on their website, they list, the days. If there's a fitness test, take that serious, prepare for it, train for it, especially if it's something, a fitness test compared to maybe a skill set. Fitness, you can really, you go out every day and make sure you're making those numbers, and getting to that level where they're supposed to, so you don't get cut because you didn't make a certain fitness test. And then once you're at tryout, have fun. I know it's such a weird, it's just like a small thing to say, but it really is. Show the passion. I don't know, movement is a way to express yourself, so show your style, show your characteristic. And even though it's tryouts, you want to show you're a good teammate. You want to cheer other people on, be the first in line, be early. That's another thing too. If tryouts start at 4, don't show up at 4. Be there 3:30, especially if you're new to the school. Get your cleats on or whatever. Get your gear on. If you're standing around, that's better. You can calm yourself down. Kind of breathe a little bit. Try to meet some of the teammates. And then if you get to the point where you gave it your all and you end up not making the team, then I would say, then if it's still your passion, find a place to keep playing. There are a lot of opportunities in communities to, practice the sport, continue on. And I have seen athletes that they'll make it maybe their freshman, sophomore year, and then they make it their junior, senior year. They get stronger, they get, maybe stronger, bigger, fitter, that type of situation. And, they keep at it. So it can happen. I feel like many times I see people self-select themselves out of a sport. They're too critical. There's a fine line of being critical to improve yourself, but not to the point where you stop performing or stop doing what you love still. So there's self-evaluation, but not to the point where you stop the sport, which is important it's important to learn, I think, a life lesson of that,
Absolutely.
And then the letdown of being cut, it's hard. I mean, I don't know any way to say that. It's just, it's not fun for anybody. Take a little time, it hurts, so it's one of the things that try to, after the next few days, maybe do what you kind of love outside of that sport. Maybe it's hanging out with your dog. Maybe you enjoy cooking. Maybe you just want to take a hike, just try to maybe just hang out with friends and do nothing, just try to kind of do something a little bit different, try to find your other passion for a little bit and then make a plan and try to get back out there.
Yeah, well, it almost sounds like, when you go into a scenario like that, you have to be, and just like, when you're on a field, when you're on a court, it's like great athletes are not just visualizing the one play that they want to run. They're visualizing like, what's the plan B? If this pass doesn't work, where am I going next? They're thinking 2-3 steps ahead. And I almost think that if you're embodying that mentality, you have to kind of see tryouts as that too. Like, all right, I'm going to give it my all to go out for this team. If I don't make this team, I have a whole season ahead of me. What am I doing instead? Is there another sport I want to do? Can I play a club sport? Can I really invest in my mental health this season and, get my head in the right place to approach it again next year? Like seeing those 2, 3, 4 steps ahead and other things that you can be doing so that, one upset or something going the way you didn't anticipate it going isn't like the end all be all, because it's high school sports. And college sports, they are high stakes things like scholarships, big life moves, things come out of it. But I think that, especially having spoken to some of the teens at our workshops and events, that amount of pressure can be crippling and actually take away from your sports performance itself, just caving to that pressure.
And the thing about pressure is, honestly, you're kind of lucky to have that pressure.
Mhm.
You want to lean into it. You want to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations, and that helps you grow. I mean, honestly, it's fun. Like, you're like, let's do, you've prepared. Hopefully at that point, when you have that pressure, you've prepared. Just like anything, just like a job. You want to be ready. Like, I know these plays. I know my role on the team. I know what it takes to get to that next, to perform today. So you take all that, take a deep breath, and then you go for it. And you take on that pressure, that's the fun part.
I love that you mentioned, when you're talking about the tryout process, you mentioned certain things like don't show up on time, be early, like when you show up, greet the other people that are there. I think that as high schoolers, sometimes, you might have this perception that like, oh, they're just looking for like the best players empirically. But when you're going out for a team sport, coaches and people evaluating your performance, they're looking obviously at your athletic performance as a solo player, but there's so many other things that go into the success of a player on a team. Some of those
Mhm.
things like, oh, this person shows up early, they're respectful, their uniform is clean, or whatever it is. Can you tell us a little bit about like the other things that coaches, administrators are looking at in student athletes that just demonstrate, a really good team player and someone that you want to keep on a team?
Yeah. What does that look like?
Mhm.
It looks like, like you said, like we've said, kind of like being on time, being early, helping with setup, taking down setup, not rushing out of the gym or out of the field and you're like, oh, I got to go. Sure, sometimes you have things, right? But if you don't, you're helping picking up the balls, you're shagging the balls. If the coach wants you to sprint to pick up the balls, you sprint to pick up the balls, like you listen and you do what they're doing. Another good thing about being a, good teammate in the sense of, if say you're a freshman on a varsity team or younger, older, look at the kids who are the athletes who are starting, who are playing all the time. Maybe you're kind of getting a little playing time. See what they're doing. See how they're responding to coach. See how they're treating teammates. It's okay to take kind of like, okay, I see when coach says something, my teammate says, got it, yes, so they know you're listening, like, okay, I could do that too, so it's important to know your role on the team. It's hard because I would say this is the hardest one for transition when you go to college,
Mhm.
because everybody's their county MVP, right? And they're all on the same team. So that's an adjustment for a lot of players when they're used to starting every game in high school and then going off to college. So talking to your coach, being a self advocate of, hey, what is my role? What can I work on to earn more playing time? And again, being prepared. It's okay to have notes, you don't have to have it written down in your phone. You can tell your coach, I'm looking at my phone because I have notes. I just want to make sure I'm covering everything, and state it because you don't want them to think that you're like you're checking your, text or social media or
Yeah.
something, and that's okay to do. Be like, okay, I have my notes in my phone and let me just read it and take your time. It's okay to, maybe you had your first conversation, maybe you felt rushed. Maybe you go back and you're like, wait, I didn't quite ask. I'm not clear on what I need to do to earn more playing time. That's okay to revisit it. It's okay to ask questions again. It's not like it's one time and you don't get to talk about it again. It's okay to keep self-advocating and keep communicating and to make sure that you're clear with your expectations for yourself and what the coach's expectations are. I think that's very important.
Yeah, this is such a great point that you're making because I think that especially as you're rising the ranks, maybe going from a high school team to a college team, there's intimidation there. It's like, wow, I'm playing with some of the greatest players or I'm surrounded by really talented people and like you look at the coaches and there can be this element of feeling like you need to read their minds or just kind of
Mhm.
know what you're supposed to be doing and then maybe a mystery of like like I feel like I'm doing everything, but I'm just not getting the playing time that I want. Or like I'm like I'm not in the position that I've always played. And like, why is that? And just like, going to them with questions. I mean, I think it's something that that's another thing that we can like talk ourselves out of is like, why don't I just go and ask, And
Yep.
being on the other end, I can imagine how refreshing it probably is for a student to come and that's also an amazing physical player to also be a great communicator and
Yep.
take feedback and to have prepared for a conversation with notes in their phone or something. I think that just all goes to say what kind of player and person that is that's showing up. And I mean, someone comes to you with those kinds of questions, it's like, yes, like I'll give you feedback. I'm sure you're already thinking something. So
Yeah, and you have to be ready for the feedback too, right? So you're prepared, but it might be hard to take, and try not to react to it. It's a hard thing, but they might say like your fitness level is low. And you're like, wow, I'm like training every day. How's my fitness level low? But just understand it, take it, maybe even take notes. Then that's something you could revisit. Okay, you said I was, my fitness levels was low, but I improved on these, markers, these tests that we did. So try not to get defensive if you have that official sit down, because you're like, you do have to listen. You do have to, if you ask, you have to be ready.
totally. And I think that like remembering context, because especially, as an athlete, if you focus so much in a sport, it can really become part of your identity, right? And when something's that niche, and if you're passionate about it, which you have to be to play at that level, it's hard to kind of not internalize and make everything personal or emotional. Being able to kind of compartmentalize and also see the context that if you have a coach who puts you on a team, they're invested in you. And then if that coach is turning around and giving you hard feedback, they're not doing that to hurt you. They want you to succeed. And it's not easy to give someone hard feedback. Coming from, being in positions now that I'm sure we could both attest to, like having to give employees feedback or people, hiring and firing people, it's really, really difficult to like give people hard news. It takes something to give that. And it's usually because you want that person to succeed and grow. So approaching that conversation knowing that like, okay, this person might be telling me something that I don't want to hear, but rather than me coming and being defensive and like actually proving them wrong, like they're giving you something as a gift for you to, take and work on. And maybe they're, right. Maybe they're 80% right, whatever it is, like it's a gift for someone to give you that kind of feedback, especially if they're, a coach on your team and someone that believes in you. So, you mentioned that process of obviously you honed in on soccer and then you proceeded to play in college. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience of going from being like top of your sport in high school and then joining a D1 team and just the mental game that had to happen there to acclimate and then eventually become, a captain of your team? Can you
Yeah.
like put us in your head about that experience?
Yeah, there's so many parts of it. I would say it's probably one of the hardest things I did athletically wise, because you're on your own. You don't have your parents waking you up and making sure you're getting to that, 6 a.m. practice. You're making sure that you're preparing, you're getting enough sleep. Your games are say Thursday and Sunday, or Friday and Sunday, making sure that you're getting your sleep. Maybe when there's other distractions that could happen in college, and making sure you're having proper nutrition to perform at a high level, And so I would say that skill wise, I felt like I was pushed to a skill level you never thought you could get to, right? You just, and the strengths that they, because all Division Ones, well, they have strength and conditioning, so you have your strength, your power, the skill set, and then it's hard, I mean, you're working really hard, but you have to commit to it. You're like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want my college experience to be. And that's the only way to do it. You have to be fully invested. And it's amazing. You get to travel the world practically and get to play the sport you love. And it just, the experience is just something you'll never get, So if you have the opportunity to play 100%, you should, but it's not easy, but it's amazing at the same time.
I had a lot of friends on the teams when I went to UCLA, and I remember seeing them grapple with that process because, a lot of athletes tend to also be pretty social, likable people. They've come from being stars on their, sports teams in high school that everyone's going to and watching, and they're familiar with their faces. But, being in college, it's like, it's really trial by fire for everybody going to college where you have to be able to live, like make sure that you're fed and showered and you're doing your laundry and you're doing your homework and you're showing up to class. And, you don't have someone like checking in and make sure you're doing, most people don't on your day to day. You really become responsible for all your choices and prioritizations. But then you add in collegiate athletics to that and you have your conditioning and you have, At UCLA, and I'm sure most of the D1 schools, they had people that were on top. Like, you have to be on top of your academics too in order to keep
Mhm.
playing. There's rules about
Mhm.
that. So the amount of focus and constant prioritization that these students have to be growing and honing that skill of just decision making with their time management is enormous, and just like an experience that I think only college athletes have in that specific.
Yeah, and you definitely learn, that budgeting your time,
Mm,
that self-control, that discipline of just that the choices, right? You have to keep your goal in mind every choice. It's definitely a challenge. You get challenged for sure. And you just have to keep focused. It's a long focus, but you have to keep focused.
totally. As team captain, can you speak on just the experience of being a team captain generally, whether it's high school or college sports, the skills in addition to obviously the physical athletic skills, but the team maintenance skills that it takes to be a captain of a good, healthy team? Were there certain skills, things that you always kept to as captain, beliefs that you had about a healthy team? Can you tell us about
Mhm.
like the captain's mentality?
Yeah, and I think this one just over the years, I've seen many different styles, right? From just being this in sports management, sports administration. I would say it's important to understand what your style is. Are you somebody who likes to lead by example? And you could be multiple things. You don't have to be one thing, right? Lead by example. You're the one who does that extra 100-yard sprint or, does a little something extra, always first to set up the drill or something, Are you one that wants sit down meetings and communication? There's luckily, again, amazing. There's a lot. If you do Google searches, there's job descriptions now of captains. I know that people have made these in the past, but now that you can take and pick what you think is good and you can use all these skills and kind of write up what you think you should be doing for the season. It's a partnership with the coach, asking again, what is the role of the captain? Am I just there to pump up the team or am I giving, doing more descriptive details of what the drills are, or details? Am I telling them communication of where this jersey, where this, am I doing very specific things? So there's all different ways that a captain's roles are now, and it really depends on what the coach wants and is envisioning. So I think it's very important, again, having another sit down meeting of, hey, what are we doing here? What's my bullet points? What do you want to see for as a captain?
Absolutely. Now, along the way, I mean, a lot of things have to go right for a student to be a successful high school athlete, make it into college athletics, and sustain and graduate as a college athlete. Along the way, there are a lot of, obstacles or times when it can get a little bit
Mhm.
tough. Obviously, being an athlete in any capacity is a big demand on your body. And, we've had another episode, we had a very competitive swimmer that later became, she works in a eating disorder recovery center. And she's there because she experienced just really extreme body image issues, and that kind of evolved into more later in her life. Can you tell us a little bit about just some of the body image, self-esteem, having to develop like a healthier lifestyle, where things can get a little sticky, and where, like, what kind of resources or tools young women
Mhm.
specifically for our audience can lean
Mhm.
into when they're experiencing that?
What's wonderful, I think, is that there's so much information about the science behind it. The science behind what you need prior to a competition, during a competition, after a competition, and there's information online and in store. Say you go to, a brick and mortar store type situation and talk to somebody about it. There's so many ways to get all the information to make sure that you're feeling your body before, during, and after nowadays and making sure that you're, um, you know, again, it's that communication, trying to learn what others are doing, say, the demand of college. What are your teammates doing that have been there for 3, 4 years? What are they eating when they go into preparation to before a game? So I would definitely say definitely learning what others are doing, learning the science behind it. And then I would say just kind of staying focused on kind of your goals and dreams in that sense, So it's that self-talk, right? Not being so critical where it's putting you in a different direction. You want that self-talk of, still being positive and working on it. Maybe something you have to work on, just kind of what is your trigger word in a way? What is that word that you're been training, you're exhausted, but you still needed to go out and do more or something, to get prepared. Everyone has a different word, and it's literally one word that you use. It could be strong, it could be tenacity, it could be powerful, use words that whatever you think would get you in that moment of that sticky situation. Be like, okay, I'm a warrior, whatever it is. And you can use that in any type of life situation. It's just a skill that you're going to potentially learn during that hard point of the athletics.
Absolutely. I love that because it's really, it's that's what you're talking about is affirmations. There are so many different things that we can do and we really focus on this in our courses, is kind of taking our students through inventory of their own personal skill sets, but then also like, okay, when you're in the steep and the deep and when things aren't going your way, like what tools actually work for you? Like, is it a set of words that you can lean into and kind of trick yourself into changing your mindset? Is it a song, a pump up song that you can listen to that switches you into gear? For me, I mean, I'm not a team athlete, but I like my workouts are such a central part of my success and mental health and physical health. But like every time I go and lift, like I do the same warm up every time I go to lift. And for some reason, that specific warm up, like it just gets me present and gets me into this state where I'm like, okay, I know I am here. I'm in it now. Like I don't even have to think, like I'm just here to show up and do work. There's so many little tools that you can do to just get out of your head when you're spiraling or being overly critical, and that you need to kind of just show up for whatever you're trying to achieve. Do you have any little tools like that you'd like to share that just over the years with your own athletic endeavors that you have gravitated towards?
I would say the lifelong athlete in me, when you're working many hours, late nights, potentially with, supervising sports, and you still have to wake up and get your exercise in. Like you said, it's important to have that every day, and half the battle, like you just said, is just showing up. And so, not every day might not be you're pumped, right? Like every day might not be like, I'm ready to go, I'm going to tackle this workout. It's just, you just got to get yourself there. And then you just go through it, and you're like, at the end, you're like, that was amazing. I'm happy I was here, So it's important just to keep showing up. And I guess that's more just athletics, but just to show up.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's such a great, I mean, it's two words, right? Just show up. And it's not always going to be like the most astounding workout you've ever performed or game you've ever played. But, I think so much research keeps pointing to consistency and the value of consistency over going and doing some crazy explosive, whether you're a team athlete or you're just a person trying to work on their health and wellness, the value of showing up incrementally every day or every week, at least, consistently is so much more beneficial for your body than trying to do things in like, extremes or all at once and then quitting and kind of having this like yo-yo, approach to fitness.
Yeah. And it's important to not overtrain. Sometimes you do need, like, a showing up might be you're taking a walk with a friend showing, that might be still you're being active, but you're not doing, like you said, explosive every day. Your body needs time to recover, proper fuel, proper rest. And then you get back into the proper training schedule, so you want to make sure that which sport, obviously every sport's a little bit different for recovery and the training, but not overtraining is important for athletes to learn. And it's hard. It's really hard to do because out there, someone's working hard, and you want to beat that person. So it's hard to make sure you're really listening to your body.
Well, I think also as a young person, it's sometimes hard to when people are like, play the long game or like it's the long road. And you're like, yeah, like I kind of just want to win this game on Friday. It's like you have a shorter scope when you're younger, and that's how life is.
Yeah.
But really leaning into understanding that it's like the more measured you are, the healthier you approach things in moderation, keeping your mind strong, keeping your body strong, taking care of yourself, giving yourself nutrition to perform at your level, sleeping, it's like you're going to be able to play your sport for longer and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately enjoy it more.
Yeah. Yeah. Very important.
So you work with a lot of high schoolers, obviously, and we like to talk pretty openly about, as women in that age group, there's a lot going on, not only are our brains growing, our bodies are growing and going through a lot of, whether they already have in middle school or are entering puberty and stuff during high school, our bodies change and the energy demands of like going through puberty and everything as a young woman, it can impact sports and the body you've used to be like performing in up to that point and how you have to kind of incorporate it moving forward. Do you have any like advice or resources for young women who may be struggling with changing bodies, changing energy levels as they go through getting their periods and wanting to continue in their sports?
There are a lot of high schools that have definitely resources with maybe a wellness department and even a strength and conditioning coach, that can help maybe in the sense of like, what little things can I do at home? Maybe some band work if my, things are, changing, shifting a little bit. What can I do to keep getting ready and maybe doing it on my own? And then definitely using resources with wellness of just what's happening, learning about it, and making sure that you're getting as much information as you can to keep moving forward and keep doing all the right things to prepare yourself.
I think that's so productive for young women to hear, like, okay, no, it's no secret that you have a period now. Like everybody has them. It's nothing to be shameful of. As an athlete, it actually, I think it's really interesting. I've heard more research on like, well, actually, if you incorporate your training approach to incorporate where you're at in your cycle, you can actually use it to your benefit. Like at certain stages in your cycle, I think they're like the last time it was like day 12 or something is actually like a great time to really push it,
Yeah.
because you have high energy, but then kind of like
Yeah.
focusing on different things and nutrition is especially important in certain
Mhm.
parts of your cycle, taking it a little easier, focusing on rest and hydration,
Mhm.
that just like embracing that like, okay, this is part of who you are as a young
Yeah.
woman. It's not going anywhere for a while. I mean, in some cases, I guess I also know that like with either athletes that are just training really, really hard or at a certain level of like body fat. Sometimes, your cycle does come and go a little bit, but for the most part, it's a part of life for all women and it's nothing to
Yeah.
be ashamed of. And you can totally be an awesome athlete no matter what,
Yeah.
even go
Yeah.
after
Yep.
going through.
Yep.
puberty.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You mentioned loving the competition
Mhm.
aspect of
Mhm.
sports. Can you tell us a little bit about healthy competition, what that looks like, the mindset around it, and just the students that you've seen be really successful competitors? What are the
Yeah.
qualities of that competitor?
Yeah. I would say there's a interesting, I don't know if you've ever seen, but like right before kids come out of a team room or, right before you take the field or court, there's a sense of calmness, where you're excited, maybe you have little butterflies, but you've taken that deep breath and you right before you step on the court. That's just an amazing, like when you see it, you're like, oh, they're ready to go, because, maybe they've done their visualization. They've done, kind of going through the game plan, seeing themselves hitting that 3-point buzzer, shot, right? So all the preparation before, sure, you've trained, but that moment of you warmed up and now you calm yourself for a second, like, okay, I got this. We got this as a team. Let's do this. It's important to learn that skill. Like you might be nervous. Say you have to do a board presentation at some point or like pitch something that, little nervousness is good. It's fun. Right. And then you calm it down and you get focused, you get prepared, you get yourself ready and you go for it. Right. So that's an important skill to learn prepping for competition. And then when you're in the competition, obviously, especially depending on the sport, you could be in a gym where people are, 5 feet off the court, or volleyball, some, basketball, volleyball, anything like that. I would say that it's important to not get distracted, right? It's easy to get distracted by other people, but staying in focus with your teammates, bringing each other back in, getting that like, okay, we still are in this game, or we got this, just different. Sometimes you don't have long conversations, problem solving on the court, or on the field. It's important to be able to, sometimes you can't hear your coach, to be able to make adjustments. So that part of competition, there's just so many little things that are exciting, and that pressure is important to have. It's good to learn how to live in that moment and make adjustments on the fly. So it's definitely okay to be competitive. Like, I don't know, sometimes I think, I don't know, sometimes it seems like people like, oh, you get labeled maybe too competitive, but it's okay to really just want to play and want to win, and that's okay.
I love hearing this, especially as a female athletic director, speaking to a mostly female audience. I think you're so right. Like, historically, women that have been really aggressive, pursuing what they want, competitive and excited by competition and wanting to do more and take things to the next level, that can be really intimidating to people. And when people are
Mhm.
intimidated is usually when they like to label and try to compartmentalize people back into boxes that they're comfortable with. But it's so fun because so at the time we're recording this, and it'll be just a, couple weeks out from the end of the Olympics in Paris,
Yeah.
that I'm just thinking about all the incredible women that we've seen just smashing records and getting medals, encouraging each other. Like, that doesn't happen from letting people put you back into a box, or, having to confine to think that competition isn't a feminine quality. If anything, I think it's the opposite. As women, as we like advance through our lives, whether or not we start families, there are so many settings that demand us to be competitive and to prioritize and
Mhm.
protect and advance, our teams, whether they are our sports teams or our families or our work teams. And it's an amazing quality that I think can also be combined with sportsmanship. You implemented the Pursuing Victory with Honor sportsmanship program. Can you tell us just a little bit about how we can combine that awesome competitive force with sportsmanship, and how, you know, it's this constant balance of like pursuing winning and, taking things to the next level, but then also in those opportunities to really just be a good sportsman or sportswoman. What are the elements of, pursuing sportsmanship with excellence
Mhm.
in your mind as a director?
Yeah, I think, well, real quick, going back to the Olympics that just happened. I
Yeah.
mean, I thought it was amazing to see just the power and strength of all these athletes. I mean, it was just so incredible. And like you said, how they were really supporting each other too. I mean, that is just so much fun. I can't wait for the Olympics in LA. Like, I'm so ecstatic, so that's really neat to see. I would say that pursuing victory with honor, it's definitely a guideline. They've all, one of the things is, say, winning and losing graciously, right? What does that really look like, right? Like, because it seems, something's really competitive, high, close match, and it's high school level, right? And your team wins, but the other team, it might be the senior's last game of ever playing that sport, and respecting the game and respecting, like, hey, they worked just as hard as us. We won, we did A, B, and C to win the match, but knowing that it's okay to be competitive, but shake hands at the end. Good job, everybody, and then it's hard to put yourself in their shoes in a sense. Like, wow, that was a great match, but that might be their last time playing, So it's important to think about, I know it sounds weird, but think about others. Think when you're in that competition moment. Also with the competition too, I think the importance of learning self-confidence too, right? Kind of going back to that is, it's a skill to not show everybody kind of what you're thinking, right? Like, say you're going up, say it's softball, for instance, right? You're going up and this pitcher is just fast, right? The fastest pitcher you see. Well, you don't need to show anybody. You're like, oh my gosh, this pitcher is so fast. You go up, you use your word, that trigger word, you take a deep breath, and you do the best you can, right? And that's a skill set to learn, that you act like you're confident, and that's okay, and hopefully over time you'll learn that skill, and it will you'll keep getting more comfortable being that appearance of that confidence. That's a really important skill for people to work on as well.
We are obsessed, obviously, with self confidence and communication and how they kind of feed each other in all different settings. But we just put out a course, Define Confidence, which is really kind of like our confidence 101. It's 5 sessions, but it stems out of our belief that confidence is a muscle, that it's not
Mhm.
something like a destination that you just reach one day and it's like, oh, then she transformed into a confident person and walked that way for every day of her life. No, it's something that it's a muscle, and just like whatever workout you choose to do, you choose your confidence workout every day, whether it's a mindful thing you're putting together or something that is just, not as mindful, maybe. We practice confidence, whether we're strengthening it or letting it, become weaker. And we go through like a really explicit like toolkit that you can assemble for yourself where if you're
Yeah.
having a day where it's like, man, I'm just like not feeling it today. Okay, like let's dive into my toolkit and know what do I know about myself up to this point? What do I know about my vision of the future? What tools can I use to get present right now and like settle in my most confident self?
Yeah, and that might be important to use before a big game,
Totally.
before a big, some, big the tryouts that are coming, to use that to kind of refocus. It's part of that. And even revisiting or setting short and long term goals, and writing them down. You want to, don't just want to kind of throw them out there. You
Right.
want to be able to see them in your journal or wherever you're writing them and revisit them. Maybe you get to a point where you're writing all your workouts down. You want to check in, are what I'm doing here, is this helping my short and long term goals? And being specific with them, not being like, I'm going to be the best player, like I want to be able to be on this team or hit this many balls into the court. Like you want to have you want to be very specific on your measurable goals.
Yeah, so that was one of the topics that, I have on my list is really the value of learning goal setting as an
Mhm.
athlete. And what you said was so important that, the more specific you can get, the more likely you are to reach that goal. And I
Yeah.
think that that makes the point that obviously this is relevant to athletics, but all of these skills that people learn on team sports are things that
Mhm.
transfer into life outside of sports.
Oh yeah.
Making a measurable, specific, time bound goal
Mhm.
in athletics or in your job or your personal life down the roll is really again a muscle that you can flex, and it reaps so much more benefits than just like, oh, I hope I get to this thing, or I'm going to manifest this thing, and then like if it doesn't happen for me, then it would just shucks. Like we have so much control. I think the one of the hardest things to do sometimes is like knowing what to ask for or what to aim for, you
Yeah,
know.
kind of articulating, like starting with that dream. Sure, you definitely want that dream, and then how do you articulate? What are the steps? And you break it down, you write it down, and that's another skill to have for sure.
Totally. I mean, we all know that like Simone Biles didn't just say like, I want to go to the Olympics
Yeah,
and
she worked
see,
hard.
like that
Yeah.
girl dissected every single one of
Mhm.
those physical moves and is running through them constantly. She had a science behind
Mhm.
doing what she's doing and pushing those boundaries. And it
Yeah.
takes constant refinement and testing what your own limits to be, maybe adjusting in her case, her goals to be bigger than she
Yeah.
thought they should be, and continuing to set goals that maybe even other people have not even defined yet. That goal setting process is such a transferable skill to the rest of your life
Yeah.
too.
Yes. Yeah.
So I had a lot of collegiate athlete friends, and it's interesting to watch what athletes do as they leave the college setting because some go semi-pro or pro and athletics becomes, their job, or they go into athletic management. But some people shift and they stop playing their sport every day or as their central thing. It can be really hard for
Mhm.
some athletes that when they go from like this really organized team setting, team workouts, the game schedule, the seasons, to having to again, just like when they shifted to college and had to manage their
Yeah.
own schedule, then going to be like, okay, well, I guess if I'm not getting my workout from these practice schedules that were all laid out for me, I've got to like kind of work out my own routine again now as I'm like pursuing a different type of job. Or there are also athletes that you see go out into different career paths and they just crush because they're using those transferable
Oh
skills
yeah.
just in a different setting. The investment firm that I worked for deliberately would hire athletes, even though a lot of them had no direct skills or, experience in finance, but they had this mentality, discipline when
For
it came
sure.
to executing goals that is really only honed through having that athletic experience. Can you tell us a little bit about just like that transition experience for athletes as they leave like the organized
Mhm.
sports setting?
I mean, most people, there is a transition that happens, sometimes maybe younger and sometimes a little bit older. I would say that it's important to figure out what you enjoy, right? Are you somebody who really needs to be in that team environment? You need to join like adult programs. There's so many avenues, like you love the yoga side of it. You love throwing weight around and doing the CrossFit. There's so many different things you just have to figure out. It might be trial and error that you've used growing up of what sports you like. So you have to, again, find a different community. If you are maybe based on injury or just time and you don't have enough to play the sport that you really have your passion for. What's your next thing? What's, figuring out where you can keep moving, especially if that's what you love to do. So that's really important to do. It's hard to do, but it is really important to keep that part going.
Totally. And I think that like if you're finding a hard time having that motivation because it's a different context, like you said, like, okay, well, what can you pursue that has a different community? Because really with a community comes accountability.
Mhm.
If someone expects to see you every Tuesday at that one class and you don't show up, like they're gonna be like, well, where were you? And something as
Mhm.
simple as like, well, they're going, so I should go, is a
Yeah.
really good way to kind of get yourself into a new habit. So if you're having a hard time or getting down on yourself, like, why am I not going to the gym every single day like I used to in college? Maybe you just need a new context or community or setting that gives you that kind of team mentality in a way, even if it's solo, like a solo workout that you're doing, having a community, a sense of a team around you.
And maybe don't have the time to leave your home, and there's so many opportunities online now too. There's so many, different type of classes you can still take or, still have, use social media to find what you're like, ooh, I like that type of workout. I should do more of a Pilates and let me see if there's somebody online. So you definitely just start doing your research and figuring out like, okay, I could do that. Let's try that, and again, another goal setting twice a week. I'm going to do this class or something, so it's
Totally.
important to do. It's important to take that moment and that time to just keep strengthening yourself.
I love it. Well, this has been so valuable, so much fun. You're so easy to talk to, which is so refreshing because you have a lot of accolades and you're in a very managerial position. You have a lot of people looking to you for guidance and vision, direction. So I think that this is just such a great resource for young women, for anyone listening to our podcast to have your
Yeah.
perspective on this journey through athletics. And
Yeah.
I love how your own story has really just informed your perspective in what you're doing right now. We usually like to do like a kind of fast five little questions towards the end of our
Okay.
podcast. And then we always end with the same question. So if you're ready, we'll dive into
Okay.
that.
Sounds good.
All right. Number one for the fast five, what is your favorite Olympic sport?
Oh, soccer.
It
That's
was
easy.
awesome to watch this
Yeah,
year. It's
yeah, I
so,
love it. Can't
so
get enough of
fun.
it.
Number two, do you have a morning routine? And if so, what is it?
I definitely work out every morning. Most days I do. I'm really, into running right now. So it's definitely, I'm on a little running team. So definitely running right now, but definitely work out. It just helps set the day, like you just it gives you a moment of just kind of calmness and clarity. And then once you're done, you're like, okay, I can, tackle my to-do list today.
Totally. I feel like there's just nothing like it. Fun fact. So Jessica was at my wedding about 5 years ago. I don't know if it was the morning of the wedding or the morning right before, but I was still working out when we had a destination wedding. So I was in the gym and it was pretty much just me and Jessica walked in and I was like, I knew I would just
Yep.
see you here. But it's
For
just like the
sure.
best way to start off a big day or
Yeah.
a day that's going to demand a lot of you. For me, I'm like, this is my time. Like I
Yeah.
kind of just be inside my body before I'm out doing a million
Yeah.
things. And it just made me smile to see her in the
Yeah.
gym. Okay, number three. What is one thing you wish all high school athletes knew?
Ooh. Ooh, that's a good one. Definitely enjoy it. It's fun, it's fast, there's demands. things are going to come at you that are challenging, and maybe it could be something with socially, or it could be an injury that sidelines you, and it's important to learn. This is a great opportunity to learn those tools in this moment where you have support around you to learn the skills and just really enjoy it and take the time, because it's a great experience.
Well, I think like at the end of the day, it is called playing sports, and as high stakes as it can feel for, all of the different paths that athletics could take you, at the end of the day, like it's fun and it's
Yeah.
like, a period of your life that, if you don't enjoy, you'll never get back.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love that. Have fun. Okay, number 4. What do people commonly misunderstand about the role of an athletic director?
A lot of times people don't know what we do. There's 50 teams at my high school. There's so many little things per team to get prepared and make sure that the game goes off, the officials show up. It sounds simple, but you have to make sure that the game happens, right? So there's so many little details to make sure that everything goes smoothly. You did your job. Sure, sometimes things come up and you have to problem solve on the spot. But I would say that there is a lot of checklists to do to get a game to happen. And depending on how big the game is, the crowd size, because that's what's so fun about high school sports is it's a community event, and so how do you prepare for your community to come and enjoy this experience with the high school athletes, high school students, parents, and the community? It's just such a fun environment to be in.
Number 5, what is the most important communication skill that you use on a regular basis?
Following up if I have more questions or need clarity, like some clarification, right? I feel like sometimes people are busy, right? And everybody juggling a lot of parts of their lives, right? So if you have conversations with somebody and you kind of after the conversation, you're like, looking through your notes, you're like, I'm not quite clear on that, or maybe I need to follow up that. It's okay to keep following up, to make sure you're on the same page with that person. I think that's important skill to learn, to re-ask, like, I still need clarification on this, or I'm not clear on what this is, and that it's okay to do that.
Follow-up is such a great skill, and I think universally appreciated. Like, what's the worst that you could do? Like, maybe annoy someone, and if that's the case, maybe they don't care about the thing as much as they
Yeah.
should in the first place,
Yeah.
Follow-up, I
Yeah.
think, is a great communication
Yeah.
skill
Very
and what
important.
to end our Fast 5 on. Okay, so our final question is always, what was one quality that you had as a young woman that maybe you didn't take pride in then, but looking back, you're so proud of now?
I would say being competitive. Just I think it's changed over time. Like you said earlier, it's okay to be competitive, and that it's just something that's developed over time. And I think it's important skill to have.
So good. Well, Jess, thank you so much
Yay!
for coming on. This was a blast. I cannot wait for our audience to hear it, and I hope to see you again really soon.
I know. Thank you.
Same,
Yeah.
same. Thank you.